We went down into a valley. There was a huge 500-pound bomb crater in the bottom of that valley. It wasn't a big valley. It was more like a riff or a wash type of thing, but it was about 50 feet down. We passed by the 500-pound crater, and there was a trail going up to the other side to the ridge line, and there was lots of trees and palm trees and things. And so Tex said, "Let's go up this trail." And I was walking assistant point. Our machine gunner was behind me, Katola, and we got up probably 100 yards up that trail, and there were three NVA to our left up on the ridge sitting on a bunker. There were two of them sitting, and the other one was standing sort of behind the bunker. And then we were in pretty tall brush, so they didn't see us. So Tech said, "Let's fire them up." And I said, "That's probably not a good idea." I didn't think that was a good idea at all, but he was not even hesitating. He popped up and started firing. He had a sawed-off shotgun, and he was pumping. And then me and Rodney got up at the same time, and we were able to hit all three of the NVA. Two of them, one was he was still mobile. We hit him. I'm pretty sure we hit him, but he was still mobile. So we didn't know if we had killed him or not. But then all of a sudden, the whole ridge line started to open up, and so we knew there was a bigger bunker complex because all of a sudden we had tons of fire coming from our whole ridge line,
Wow.
and we decided that we were up against a bigger force than what we were. So we said, let's retreat back to the bomb crater and see if we can bring in a gunship or artillery. So we covered the rest of the squad. They went back into the bomb crater. Then Tax and I were the last two, and they were giving cover fire from the bomb crater to the ridge line over our heads. So we were able to come back into down the trail and into the bomb crater. And then we called in gunships to come in and start pounding the area. We popped smoke, and we had a gunship on station probably within 10 or 12 minutes. He came in, and they gave us enough cover for us to get back to the platoon. So
Wow.
that was my first firefight.
How long did the whole thing last?
Oh, geez, it seemed like forever, but it probably only lasted um, maybe 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes. And we were getting low on ammo because we were firing a lot. You don't fire on automatic because you don't expend all your ammo. That would be the worst thing you could possibly do. But we were firing up that ridge line quite a bit. And we were getting low on ammo. So we said we need to get back to the platoon. And we gave them our position, and we told them we were going to, coming back up, and that we had a gun station or a gunship on station, and they were pounding that ridge line. So that was
Wow.
my first firefight. We worked in a fishhook area, and in Cambodia. Even before we went into Cambodia, we were operating in Cambodia.
Mm.
Don't tell anybody.
Wow.
And so we were constantly running into the NVA in that area, and it was a free fire zone. There was nothing there. The NVA were really good. They were very well trained. They knew our tactics. The firefight that I was in when I got wounded, we were in the kill zone of the ambush, and if we let up firing, they would let up firing. So they knew that when we're firing, we're advancing towards them. So they were very smart. They knew our tactics.
Wow.
They were very well trained, and they were motivated. So Tex had gotten a letter from home. Um, could have been a Dear John letter of some sort, but they pulled him out very quickly, um, which meant that I had to take over the squad, and I had to appoint somebody to walk point. So I chose Bob because he seemed to be pretty smart. So Bob, I said, listen, Tex is going to be back in a couple days, so we just have to get through the next couple days. And so I said, I'll walk assistant point with you. And then Fish or Larry, I said, I made him my RTO, and he'd be behind me. We were the platoon was pushing up onto a kind of a hill. It was kind of actually a peninsula, and then it dropped off really steeply. And the platoon commander at the time, I can't remember his name, said they want to make a perimeter up there, and they called us up to do a patrol on that top of that hill. And we got up on the hill. First thing we saw was a trail, and that went along this peninsula, kind of a peninsula. I saw it from the air when I was being medevaced out, actually. So it came from the ridge line into the peninsula and then dropped off. So we hit that trail when we were going to patrol the top of that hill. We came across that trail, and I said, "Well, I don't want to walk down that trail because we don't walk on the trails." I said, "We'll cut across and we'll cover that area, pretty much cover that area. We'll just cut across that and then back to the platoon." And when we were cutting across, that's when I noticed that there's these saplings that have been cut down. And I knelt down to take a look at it, and I told Bob to hold up right there and don't move. And I was looking at it, and I thought, "Well, there's got to be a fighting position here somewhere." And I was going to bring Bob over to look at it to show him, "Hey, this is what it looks like." And he had wandered off maybe about 10 feet more, 10 or 15 feet more further, which I didn't tell him to do. And then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. He was killed instantly. And then I got behind a tree, and I brought fish behind the tree with me and started firing from the right side of the tree. Everybody got online, and we have the very intense firefight. Obviously, we were in the kill zone of that bunker that was there. The firefight, it started to get very intense. Bob was killed, and I wanted Fish, and we get the radio to get the rest of the platoon online, see if they can get them up here. So I had reached across. He was on his stomach, and he wasn't firing. He was just frozen in fear, I think. And the handset, this is the handset actually. The handset was laying in front of him. I rolled over and I grabbed the handset. As soon as I grabbed the handset, there was just a volume of fire. It severed the handset, and a round went through his right eye and right out the back of his head. He was killed instantly. And then they severed this handset from the radio. And then a B-40 RPG exploded above us and just rained shrapnel down on me and him. So I was hit with shrapnel, and then the AK round that went through his right eye went across my wrist, and there's a vein there, and nicked that vein, so I was bleeding. And holding the handset, I couldn't communicate with the rest of the platoon, so we were kind of stuck at this particular point. So
And it's just that it was no, now it's you, basically you're alone at this point?
no, my squad had my
Oh, okay,
squad.
you've got your squad, okay.
Yeah, and they were firing. They were all firing. We were all
So
online
what's that,
firing.
four,
I was
four?
just that I was a little bit ahead of to the right and a little ahead of them because
Okay.
we had walked there.
At
So they
this
were,
point,
yeah,
there are 4 or 5 guys who are returning fire?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
okay, 6, 7 are down.
we were down quite a few. So yeah, we had a small squad. So yeah, they were returning fire. And again, they would fire and then they would let up because you don't want to expend all of your ammo. And so they'd let up, and then the NVA would let up. Um, our Kit Carson scout at the time, Fook, had gone over to my right, and he was trying to get them to surrender. He actually was trying to get them to surrender. It was kind of funny, and every time he talked, they would fire him up. He was behind a tree. They'd fire him up, so they weren't having any of it. So I had another guy, one of our short timers. Name is Daryl. He came in. He had taken an AK round across his cheek, and I had one bandage that I'd bandaged my arm up and put a tourniquet on, and then he came in. How he got behind me, I don't know, but I put my other bandage. I had a field bandage. I put it around him and wrapped his head up. And I said, "We have no radio." I showed him. I said, "We have no radio. We have no way of getting you back to a medevac. You need a medevac because you're losing a lot of blood." And I was losing a lot of blood too. I said, "We have no way of knowing if you go back to the platoon, they have no knowing whether you're an NVA or not." So he said, "I can make it back." He said, "I said you be hollering friendly the whole time you get back there," and he took off. And luckily, uh, two of the guys from the squad, a medic and another guy who was a platoon RTO came. His name was Tennessee. Came in and started helping us, and they brought a radio, and then they took me out because me and Daryl were going to be medevaced out. I eventually ended up in Quan Loy, and they then sent me back to Fire Base Terry Lynn. And when the rest of my platoon came back, they they brought this handset with them and handed it to me. And they said, "Here's your handset that you lost."
Here you're in a very intense situation. You're under heavy fire.
Right,
Tips you probably know is out immediately. Fish is out soon.
right.
You're wounded. Um,
I tried to get back. I tried to get up to Bob, by the way, several times, but the fire was just really intense. I could only get 2 or 3 feet from his boot, and even if I could get to his legs or his boot to try to drag him back, there's no way. There's no way I could do it. So yeah, and even the guys that came up to help me later, they said, "Can we get to Bob?" I said, "There's no way. He's right in the middle of that kill zone. You can't. There's no way you can get to him." So until
is
we get
that
more people online.
is that one of those things that you replay it over and over and over and over in
Oh,
your mind trying to get to Bob?
every day. Every day. Like, could I've done anything more? He was killed instantly. But and so was Larry. But yeah, you never forget that. You never forget even a minute of that, even a second of that. I mean, yeah, everything. You remember everything.
Um, this might be a dumb question, and it'll probably be a question that, really won't be possible to answer to anyone, to make sense to anyone who hasn't experienced it. But when you're in a firefight and you're in this kind of extremely intense situation where you know that, you've only got a squad, you've lost two already. Um,
Three.
oh, a third, and
Because
so
the guy that had an AK round across his cheek, and so yeah, so
so he's ineffective as well.
right.
Um, and then you're wounded. Does that, I mean, does anything happen psychologically? I mean, um, not in a sense of, this is a lost cause. I mean, do those thoughts begin to get into your head like this is a lost situation, or does that cause you to fight more intensely? Does it make any change when you compare that situation to other firefights where guys are not being hit? Does it change the kind of your psychological state as you can see that in the context of this very intense situation, guys are getting hit and they're getting hit very rapidly?
Yeah, well, the realization, first of all, I knew instantly that they had a fighting position that put them at an advantage. So I knew that we were at a extreme disadvantage because we were in the kill zone, their kill zone. We didn't have the cover they had. They had an AK. Usually in their fighting positions, I don't know if you've seen, the fighting positions had an entrance and an exit, or it could be either way, but they could fire out of either one of those. And what they would do, and in those fighting positions, they just put their AK above there and just firing. They keep their head down and they just fire, and that's what they were doing. Or they take a B-40 RPG and they would fire. They wouldn't fire at us. They would fire above us in the trees. So the concussion and the shrapnel and the tree shrapnel as well, everything would explode and create shrapnel below it. So that's what they were doing. They had, um, if I remember correctly, there was at least two RPG explosions in that firefight, and so they were in cover and they were in a bunker, and we were not. So we were at an extreme disadvantage. So the situation at that point is that normally, if you know, and we did the other thing we didn't have was we normally carry M72 laws, and those are very powerful. So if they have B40 RPGs. If we had a law, I would have definitely used that, but we didn't have those. So we knew we were at a disadvantage. So the best situation was to pull back and then bring in artillery or gunships and pound that position. But the problem is Bob was still up there. We could get Larry back, but and they did, but Bob was still up there in that kill zone, and it was almost impossible to reach him without losing more lives, because I'd already tried, and so we're in a very stuck situation. Yeah. So
You had been medevaced by the time they got
yeah,
by.
yeah, I was medevac. They lowered a jungle penetrator down, and they pulled me up, and at some point they locked me in, and we were taking fire. Our medic had given me morphine, so I was like, cool. I didn't care. So they locked me in, and I could hear the AK rounds going by me and hitting the bottom of the medevac chopper because you could hear them just going thunk, 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 this plinking sound. And all of a sudden they locked me in, and then they pulled me up to about probably 5,000 feet or something. I don't know, enough out of the fire. And then they stopped, and then they reeled me in from there. So.
Talk about the medics.
Medics were great. So the medevac chopper, these guys go into combat situations all the time. So and they're fearless. They know what they're up against, and they do their job, and they do it very well. They were tending to me uh, taking care of that. And then we flew to Anlock, I believe. It's either Tainan or Anlock. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it was Anlock. And then from Anlock, they sent me to Quan Loy, where the larger medevac center. And there were a lot of wounded there. I was the least wounded of all the guys that were coming in to that medevac center. So yeah, the medevac pilots are well. That's the one thing that keeps you going is that number one, you'd have that support if you get hit. That it gives you a better feeling when you're out there. If you do get hit, that you'll have the medevac people that are willing to risk their lives to come out and pick you up.
How long were you out of the bush?
Probably 2 days, 2.5 days, something like that.
What memories, when you think about those 2 days, when your wounds are being tended to, what memories stand out in your mind about those 2 days?
The biggest thing was thank God that I'm still alive. Because I thought about my daughter a lot. Tex had come in. I had come in. Our whole platoon came in to get more men, and basically we had lost a lot of guys in our platoon in general. So we had a memorial service for them, and it was just within that was a memorial service from the last, I think, week or two of fighting in Cambodia. So.
A lot of times guys say that, after you spend so much time in the bush, we've mentioned the North Vietnamese, of course, but we haven't talked about the leeches and the snakes and the mosquitoes and all that, the ants
Oh
and
my God, yeah.
the thorns
Everything.
and everything else. So
Yeah.
after and the heat and the humidity and the rain and so
Yeah.
the enemy and all those other things and the mud and the filth that after months of that, you some guys say you become almost so cold psychologically that you could go to a memorial service like that. And of course, years later, you'll feel that. But at the time, you're so exhausted, and there's almost like this huge callus over your soul that you look at that and it doesn't really even move you at that time.
Yeah,
Is
it doesn't
your
register. It
experience at
doesn't.
all?
Yep. No, that's exactly right. And you're like um you're numb. You are numb. Psychologically and your feelings, you're numb because you've seen that's just that a memorial service, but you're still, I mean, you've lost guys before that and you'll lose guys after that. And hopefully it's not you. So you're numb. More guys are going to get killed as well. You don't want to go home in a body bag. And so you have part of you that's sad and like, okay, these guys are they're going home to their families in a casket, and you're sad about that. But then you're also glad that it isn't you. You're saying to yourself, "Thank God I'm still here, and I still have to fight." So, and that's the feeling. It's like half and half, right? Like you have 50% remorse, and then 50% glad that it's not you